Hello there, I'm trying something a little bit different. A couple days ago, I went on various social media places as well as here on YouTube, and I asked people to give me questions. I want to help you with your problems. So I guess this is just going to be an advice corner, and if it picks up, if it takes off, we'll keep doing this. Here's question number 1. How do I get the alt baddie at the pet store with snake bites that wears a dog collar to let me make her dinner? Well, first of all, I would say for a first date, maybe don't invite her back to your house. That can be a little strange. Ask them out for coffee or something. You know, there's less commitment, you're out in public, so people feel a little more secure. But if this is somebody that you already kind of know and have a little bit of a rapport with, or rapport, I don't respect the French enough to say their words correctly, I accept either pronunciation. If it's someone you have a little bit of rapport with, then all you have to do is write your name and phone number on a little slip of paper, and then just go up to her and say, hey, I'd love to take you out for coffee or something sometime. You don't have to answer right now. Here's my number. And then it's all on her. If that sounds a little corny or goofy, well, yeah, it is, but so is pretty much everything that has to do with dating, marriage, and relationships. It's all a little corny and a little bit goofy. It's okay to embarrass yourself just a little bit. Like if she winds up not calling you back, at least you did it in such a way where it's not super awkward or uncomfortable for either party. How do I dismantle a conspiracy theory in a way that's easy to explain to someone who isn't the best at critical thinking? Alternatively, how do I evaluate my own critical thinking capacity so I can dismantle my own beliefs in case I'm someone who believes in a nonsense conspiracy theory? So the best way to get people to really examine their own beliefs, their own biases, is to just ask them questions. Now, this doesn't list a specific conspiracy theory, but depending on what you're trying to get people to believe or what they're trying to shake them out of, just ask them specific questions about various aspects of it. Like, hey, does that really make sense? Maybe this other explanation could also work. Because Occam's razor says that the simplest explanation is usually, not always, usually the most correct one. And by not just telling someone that they are incorrect, their defenses will be down. The most effective form of propaganda is typically the one where you're just asking questions, or jacking off, as it's sometimes referred to. Holocaust deniers and other genocide deniers do this all the time, and it's insidious because it makes people think that they are reaching their own conclusions, even though you're giving them leading questions. And if you're trying to break someone out of that mindset, the best way is to just ask them questions. How do you take back agency in your life, especially when you're in a system like medical school where it is always taken away from you? That is a difficult one to answer. I would say that if you want to take back agency in your life, start with small stuff. You know, start with thinking, okay, this is my daily schedule. How can I deviate from that? You know, like you have, let's say, 8 hours you have to sleep, 8 hours at work, and then a couple other hours where you have to spend time, you know, doing the many things that we have to do in order to stay alive, cooking, cleaning, etc. So let's say you have 1 hour a day, and most of the time you're just at home playing video games or browsing the internet or something. Break up that schedule just a little bit. You know, just go to an ice cream shop nearby instead. Yeah, have an ice cream. You know, even if it's not life-changing and you don't make a whole bunch of new friends or anything, you're doing something a little bit different. If you don't feel like going out and doing things, that's also fine. You can retake agency by just dressing a little bit differently, getting a different haircut. You know, it's really small things like that can help you start to feel more like you're in control, and that can help you actually regain control. What's the best cheese for grilled cheese? Slices of Kraft American cheese. Put 2 slices per sandwich. I will not be taking arguments on this. Are you the one that keeps stealing in my orchard? This isn't actually asking for advice, but I'm going to give it anyways. No, I am not the one that's stealing from your orchard. It's possible you might have some lemon-stealing whores in your community, and those are some pretty nasty pests. You know, they're whores, but they also steal lemons. Sometimes they steal other fruits like apples, oranges, bananas, basically anything they can get their hands on. They're pretty unpleasant, so what I would recommend doing is keeping a close eye out on your orchard. Maybe set up security cameras or something if you're feeling fancy. If you're not feeling like that, you could always just go ask your neighbors and see, hey, have you seen any lemon whores around here? Are you losing produce? Things of that nature. And whether they have or haven't, if the problem persists, you can start setting up traps. You can go to your local hardware store and find lemon whore traps pretty much anywhere. It doesn't matter what brand you're going for. Some are a little better than others, but they'll pretty much all do the job. And if those don't work, then you can take the drastic step of digging a moat around your orchard. Make sure you always follow all local zoning laws. Should I move to Colorado? I currently live in Colorado. I guess so. I like it here. It's a pretty nice place. It's snowing like crazy right now, but you know, that's just something you learn to accept when you live here. If you had to choose between eating at a Mexican restaurant or a Chinese restaurant right now, which would you pick? I would usually pick a Mexican restaurant. I personally have to be in the proper mood for Chinese food because it does have some advantages over Mexican food, don't get me wrong. Mexican food tends to have more fresh produce like vegetables and fruits and tomatoes and stuff, which is, you know, fantastic. Chinese food has less of that, but it also keeps better. So if you only eat half of it and then you save the rest for later, that'll stay fresh in your fridge for several more days and then you can come back to it very quickly. Mexican food oftentimes doesn't do that. You have to eat it at the time, and if you don't, then it turns into kind of a soggy mess. When I read a book, I tend to jump to the ending chapters when I start to get bored. How can I force myself to be happy reading the boring, asinine plots between the opening and ending of a story? This might sound a little bit glib, but just read better books. You know, it seems like you're just not that interested in what you're reading, so try out different genres. I don't know what genres you're reading that are making you feel this way. If you're just reading what's popular on TikTok or something, then yeah, you're gonna feel awful about it because most of those are awful and, as you said, have asinine plots. So, I don't know, just break out of your mold, find some highly rated, highly reviewed books from murder mystery genres or something like that. You know, just try something a little bit different and see if that keeps your attention. If not, try something different again. Any advice towards serious motivation problems? When getting started on intimidating or arduous tasks in the first place is the missing ingredient. And then he also included a little webcomic to illustrate his point. So there's no easy way to get yourself started. There's no easy way to find motivation if it's not already there. First you should ask yourself, are you actually passionate about this? Do you actually like this? Or are you doing it for some other reasons? Are you doing it because you think it'll help you in your career or because you think you should be passionate about this? And if that's the answer, then, well, you probably just shouldn't be doing it. If you are passionate about it and you just want to actually find energy to keep going, then it's entirely possible you're just being distracted. You know, like, the world has 1,000,001 distractions, so I would say whatever it is you're planning on doing, set it up in its own space, set your phone and computer somewhere else where you can't get to them easily, and then just get to work. You know, don't allow yourself to do anything other than what you're trying to do. This one's a bit longer because I did need to ask a follow-up. In a country where military service is mandatory but no wars have been fought since 1945, is it ethical for a conscript soldier who could end their mandatory service as a soldier to rank up and stay longer in the Army for the financial and career benefits it would provide? And then I had to follow up and ask if he was speaking hypothetically. And he said, "It's very much a real possibility I'm considering. I could become a specialist officer in my field of study for the Swiss Army, which would give me access to money for the rest of my studies and would grant me work experience and contacts which would give me a much better chance in the extremely competitive job market. The downside would be staying in the Army for about twice the legally required amount of time, and also my political convictions don't tend to agree with state violence or authoritarian organizations. Of course, I won't be doing any direct violence, but I'd still be working for the military, and I feel weird about that." Okay, well, if you're joining the Swiss Army as a conscript, you're probably not going to be seeing any direct action. Like, you're not going to be invading other countries, you're not going to be fighting to defend your own borders, and you're most likely not going to be used to put down rebellions or massacre protesters or anything like that. Switzerland's army, at least in my understanding, is really just there to make sure nothing bad happens. Like, they stay at the borders just like they did during World War I and World War II and say, hey, if you mess with us, we are going to give you a hard time, and so no one messes with them. They're really just there for show. So if that's something you're worried about, if you're worried about being involved in a war, even indirectly, then don't be. It's not that big a deal. Whether you're a conscript or a volunteer, the majority of the time in the majority of militaries, it's just a job for people. You know, and maybe I'm coming from a biased perspective because a lot of my family members and friends and acquaintances and such have served in the United States military in some form or other across several generations. Like my mother, my father, my stepfather, both of my older brothers, my grandparents, my cousins, uncles, like a lot of them were in. So it's really not that big a deal. It's just a job. I don't know exactly what your field of study is, but if you're going to stay there for another couple of years, well, most likely you would have had to spend that time in university or on job training or something like that, even if you weren't in the military. At least if you're in the military, you're not only getting the training, experience, and education that you require to do better in this career field, as you've described it, but you're also getting paid for it. You know, being in the military, again, like I said, it's just a job. It's also kind of like being in prison, especially if you're a conscript, but, you know, it's not as bad as prison. You're just really restricted in your behavior and where you can go, kind of like prison. But what I'm getting at here is that I do think you should stay there. I think you should stay there and continue your training for as long as it takes until you, as you said, can come out and have more contacts and you'll just be better in your field. And I don't know exactly how it works in the Swiss military, but if you reach the end of your conscription and you don't feel like doing more for whatever reason, then you can just leave then. I think you still will have time to make up your mind. And I mean, it doesn't sound like you're asking me if you should dodge the draft, which I don't think you should. So you don't have to make your mind up on this right now. I would say plan to stay in longer, because that sounds like that would be best for you personally, and you really don't need to worry about it. You really don't need to feel like you're participating in anything unpleasant, and maybe in a small way you can make the Swiss military just a little bit better while you're there. And then if you change your mind at the end of your conscription period and you don't want to volunteer to stay there longer, you don't have to. Kind of a dumb and somewhat late question, but how do I make IRL friends that I can hang out with outside of scheduled social interactions? I'm 26 and I do regular social things like play Magic the Gathering and paint Warhammer 40k minis, and there are people there I like. However, I haven't made a single friend that I could reliably hang out with outside said settings since COVID happened. I am autistic and very shy, and my spouse and I live in a new place far from any IRL friends and we've previously made. What I'm saying is, when is it appropriate to ask someone if they just want to hang out? So I think you're approaching this from the wrong perspective. You're looking at it as you need to create new friendships, and how can you do that? When you really should just be looking at the friendships you already have and looking at ways to expand that. Because if you already go out and you play Warhammer and you play Magic the Gathering and stuff with these people, then you already have something in common. So you have a foundation built there for something greater. Like, there's nothing wrong with having people who are only friends in specific context or who are only acquaintances. You know, like a lot of people who have hobbies or go to clubs, not like nightclubs, but like clubs for specific hobbies and stuff. A lot of people like that, you'll meet them and you'll get along with them okay in that context, but you're not really looking to see them outside of that, and that's fine. But if you're looking to make more friends, all you have to do is look at the people you play Magic with and look at the people you play Warhammer with and just ask them if they want to do other stuff. Like, ask them if they want to go get a drink after the Magic the Gathering tournament or whatever. I don't know how Magic the Gathering works, really. It's not something I've ever been really into, but just ask them if they want to go out and get a drink afterwards. Ask them if they want to go for a hike or you want to go see a movie or something. And eventually, some people will be into that. Some people will say yes. And over time, this just grows and develops into a bigger, deeper friendship, which appears to be what you're looking for. Oh boy, I've got an actual question. Should I go to law school immediately after finishing undergrad work or work for a couple of years before applying? Or, more broadly, is going to any kind of graduate school without taking a gap year a good idea? I know this is not your area of expertise, but I trust you to give me at least a good framework for thinking through it. Love this new segment idea. I just say take the gap year. My first couple years of college were at a community college, and I don't want to act like I wasn't putting in any effort or I didn't treat it like a priority or anything, but I feel like it sort of took a back seat in my life at that time. I was more focusing on work and friends and just experiencing what it was like to be a young adult. And looking back, those were some of the best times of my life. They weren't perfect, I still had issues then, but they were some of the best times of my life. I saved up some money, I got some experience in just, the world around me. I didn't even go traveling or anything. I didn't have a nice fancy job that looks good on a resume, but I made new friends, I met some new people, and I think that young people really should take opportunities to do that if they can. And I don't know exactly how expensive law school is, but if you're working during a gap year, then you can at least save up money and go, use that when you go to law school. So I would recommend taking a gap year, save up some money, but also just enjoy your life, relax a little bit, you'll probably be real stressed out during law school and you can look back on your gap year fondly. I used to love doing literary analysis or just reading more critically but have fallen out of practice. Do you have any recommendations for getting back into practice? Very simply put, find books that you like, read them, and then stop and think about why you liked them. Then you can read some books that you don't like and then think about why you don't like them. One of the reasons I started my main channel and started talking about books so much is because I really like reading, but I kept coming across books that were really bad and I didn't have anyone to complain about them with. Like there was a book called Dance of Shadows by Yelena Black, which I read months before I started my channel and I just didn't have anyone to complain to. I wrote a scathing review on Goodreads, but that was about all I could do. And you know, just being able to stop and think about all of the ways in which that book failed and all of the ways in which I hated it, as well as some older stuff that I read years ago, which I really hated, like The Lovely Bones, that just helped activate the neurons of my brain. You know, that helped me work out those analytical muscles a bit, and over time, I got a lot better at it. So yeah, as simple as it may seem, as glib as it may seem, I would just say read both good books and bad books, and then really spend some time thinking about why you like them or dislike them. And if possible, you know, just leave a review on like Goodreads or other websites if you feel like it. Just write it down in a notebook and keep it to yourself. You know, you don't have to have an actual audience in order to gather your thoughts. How in the world do you pronounce your name? I'm sorry, I know you probably get this a lot, but I've just never seen it before. Is it JAY-mes or JAY-mes? That one's not asking for advice, but I'm going to answer it anyways. It's James Tullis. And I swear, every time I say how to pronounce my last name, people lose like 40 freaking IQ points. It's Tullis, okay? All right, this last one's going to be pretty long, so bear with me. Is it moral to participate in the gatekeeping of my hobbies, and should I dissolve my friendships with those who participate in it? I feel a sort of peer pressure from my social circle that I should gatekeep bad actors out of my hobbies. One of my closest friends defends gatekeeping's bad reputation by saying that when most people gatekeep, they mean to marginalize others' struggles to make themselves feel better in their own pitiful existence. But in his words, true gatekeeping is about keeping people who want to change the hobby in a negative way away from the community. He says I should gatekeep those who do not want the best for my hobbies and take an active role in gatekeeping them. I don't like anything that has been going on with Magic the Gathering lately, and I don't play it anymore. My friend used Magic the Gathering as an example for the benefits of gatekeeping, and I said it's my fault that MTG is lame now because I didn't gatekeep the bad actors out of the space when I had the chance. What do you think I should do in my personal life and in regards to gatekeeping? It's kind of hard to answer this without knowing exactly what you're gatekeeping over, because sometimes gatekeeping is good. Your friend is right. If you're just gatekeeping because you want to keep the smelly girls out, then that's bad. But if you want to gatekeep people who are harassing others or trying to change the hobby or trying to change the game in ways that make it less fun for everyone or just generally being unpleasant, then gatekeeping and keeping them away is totally valid. As for your personal life, kind of hard to say because again, I don't know exactly how your relationship with your friend is working out here. It sounds like you are kind of miserable around them. And if you're always miserable around them, then I would just say, you know, cut them out of your life. You don't want to be friends with people like that. But if it's really just this one subject that you disagree on and that you're arguing about, then the only real solution is to talk to them about it, you know? Make sure you hash out exactly what you mean by gatekeeping and exactly what they mean by gatekeeping so you're working on the same ground and you're talking about the same subject, and then just go from there. Because if your friend has a different definition of gatekeeping in their mind than you do, you're just going to wind up talking in circles and you're both going to get frustrated with each other. And if your friendship is fine outside of this, then I would say keep it. You know, try and preserve it. People are a little bit too eager to throw each other away nowadays. I feel this is kind of downstream of dating apps almost. I know that might seem like a bit of a tenuous connection, but you know, dating apps and other parts of the internet make it feel like people see each other as way too disposable and way too lacking in value because there's always another one just around the corner. Some people wrote to me asking for advice on how to flirt, but I'm not putting the questions up here because, number one, a lot of times they weren't phrased as a question. Number two, they were way too vague and non-specific for me to be able to give an actual answer. So I guess the only real advice I can give you is to look nice. You know, I know that might sound glib, but again, just make sure you're properly bathed, make sure your hair is cut the way you like it, and just wear some decent clothes, you know? If you're wearing jeans and a graphic t-shirt, which I do a lot of the time, don't get me wrong, I understand, that's easy and it's comfortable, but you're not looking great. Like, just look at how I'm dressed right now. You know, this isn't super fancy or expensive, but it looks kind of nice on me, so I like it. Again, that's the only real advice I can give you with the limited information that I've been given here. So, that was my first attempt at doing this new segment. If you liked it, then be sure to, you know, like the video, share it around, and if you have any other questions, other things you're looking for advice on, then I guess just let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see if I can get to them next time. Goodbye!